Okay, what I have here is the first catalog for McSweeney's. McSweeney's Books Sampler number 1. Put out sometime in 2000. It's not dated, have not narrowed down the month adequately yet, but they published their first standalone titles in 2001. Up until this point, McSweeney's had the Quarterly Concern, Timothy McSweeney's Quarterly Concern. That was the whole press. At this point, it was just a startup small press. All they had was the Quarterly Concern. But it was successful enough to branch out into publishing some standalone titles. And of course, they're not a small press anymore. They've branched out into a variety of their own imprints, and they've got a lot going on. But at the time, this was their first foray outside of the Quarterly Concern. So I'm building a bibliographic display around this first catalog, and while I do that, I am also trying to value buy, find good deals on books that appear in a later catalog, which would include titles in the interim catalog. I have the catalog for late 2004, early 2005. So I'm just biding my time, watching for opportunities, and trying to value buy here, get things for less than what they're worth from the right place, or what they're worth if it's something I think is a good value at a going rate. But the focus here is on the first catalog, and the first title is Donnell Alexander's Ghetto Celebrity. And McSweeney's wound up not publishing Ghetto Celebrity. It went to Crown in 2003, apparently on good terms. Dave Eggers, the founder of McSweeney's, provided a cover blurb for Ghetto Celebrity when it was published. So however it came to leave McSweeney's and go to Crown, evidently everybody was okay with how and why that happened. I have not been able to determine if Donnell Alexander wrote anything for McSweeney's. It's possible he wrote for the Quarterly Concern, but I've not been able to find any indication that he has. Possibly he had a relationship with Dave Eggers, but it was strictly to the book, and he never wrote for the Quarterly Concern. But I'm still looking into that. The ISBN for his book was reassigned to issue number 7 of the Quarterly Concern, which I have a copy of that, and fortuitously there had come an opportunity to get a signed one at a very good price. So I already have issue number 7 of the Quarterly Concern signed. So that worked out well. The Donnell Alexander book, Ghetto Celebrity, I have on the way a signed copy, supposedly in very good condition. Have to see what we get. I also have on the way an unsigned copy, probably in better condition than the signed copy. I got them at good prices. It's not a book that's in demand. It's not an author that's in demand. So it becomes a question of finding the examples. And sometimes it's harder to find examples of a book that's not in demand than one that is. Uh, so it's been difficult to find nice. I'm aware of another signed copy at a reasonable price. The woman that's selling it is a little bit flaky. Whether I'm going to be able to buy this or not, I don't know. The price is fine. I don't have a problem with the price. The quality, it's hard to tell. It's hard to determine. She doesn't really know how to grade books, I don't think, and she can't take decent pictures, and I may just have to take a flyer on it. It's not that much money, and dealing with her has been problematic. Those are the only 2 signed copies I've seen in 3 or 4 months I've been looking for them. Next title is Lydia Davis. The title for that had not been determined. Untitled Collection. And it wound up becoming Samuel Davis is Indignant Stories. And that book has been one of the big problems. Well, one of the several big problems of putting this grouping together. You can find pretty nice copies without a great deal of difficulty. They're moderately priced, and I was able to get this unsigned at very good prices. And that's prices plural, because Samuel Davis's Indignant was published in 2 states of first printing. There's a first state first printing with a dust jacket that has a maroon border around the front cover, which carries to the spine and to the back cover. That's a first state first printing. But then they changed jackets. And the second state first printing, the dust jacket had a white border with a blue spine, and the white picks back up again on the back of the dust jacket. And the back of the dust jacket has blurbs, press blurbs about how good the book is. But they're not identical. Some of the blurbs on the jackets are the same. Some of them are not. So they did more than just change the color of the jacket. They changed the blurbs on the back. So we have 2 states of first printing for a book that's already hard to find nice copies of. And finding signed nice copies, that's been a big problem. They aren't out there. She's very well known, very well respected. Signed copies of decent quality examples are expensive. That's just all there is to it. There's not that many. They're all priced up there. I've never seen one that wasn't. So I've got them both signed. Not terribly happy about it. But it's a title obviously is not likely to come out of the wild. Not likely to find one. It's certainly one I'm going to be watching for, because if I find one in the wild at a bargain price, I am going to snatch it up and get some of the money back for the others. So it's definitely something I'm going to be watching for. But the point came where, do I want to let these nice copies, I know where they're at, how long do I want to sit and maybe they go away. Maybe they sit listed for a year, or maybe they don't. So I was able to get the copies correct. Very happy. Will be happier if I'm able to pull a copy out of the wild and put it on the block and get some money out of it, get some profit out of it. The ISBN, however, inside the right near the end, they list all the authors and the titles and the ISBNs. And the ISBN for the Lydia Davis book does not match Samuel Johnson is Indignant. They gave her a different ISBN and used the ISBN that had been set aside for her. They used that on David Burns's book, The New Sins, Los Nuevos Pecados. So that adds to the complexity of putting together a catalog raison for this catalog. So now the David Byrne book is in play, and it was a bestseller. And David Byrne was big at the time, pretty big now. And it was a bestseller, I believe. I haven't documented this yet, but I believe it was a bestseller before it was even released. It came with a belly band or an obi band, kind of a narrow band that wraps around the front cover, comes around, had a gold and black belly band with the title, author. Instead of a dust jacket, it had the band, but the band says it's the best-selling book. And I'm not aware of any band that does not have bestseller on it, which leads me to believe it was a bestseller prior to publication, and every book issued had the bestseller band. If there's an example out there without it, I've not seen it, and I've probably looked at hundreds of copies. It's interesting because it was published in a dos-a-dos format. It's called The New Sins, Los Nuevos Pecados, because it's printed in English, and then it's also printed in Spanish. You turn the book from the front cover to the back cover, and the back cover is really not the back cover. The back cover is the Spanish translation. And the copyright page is in the middle of the book, between the English and the Spanish. So somebody looking for copyright information has to know that it's in the middle of the book, between the two. It's another one where the book is available because it was a bestseller, but the book available signed is a problem. Almost all the signed copies I've seen are dated between mid-July and mid-August 2001. So we did a book tour, signed a lot of copies. Probably didn't sign very many copies after that. I don't know if I've seen any copies dated outside of that range. He signed and dated, so all the copies I've seen have dates, which is not typical, but it's really nice for dating an example. And everything I've seen indicates it was probably signed during a promotional tour, a whirlwind, 4 or 6 week thing. But then he went back to England and didn't come back here and sign any more books. And so they are really hard to find. I got one, really nice one. I had to pay for it. But I also think I have taken one semi out of the wild. It's not here yet, but I paid half of what the other signed copies go for. The guy was real nice about it, sent me really good pictures. We had correspondence. I really feel like it's probably what he says it is. And if it is, then I paid half of what they go for, if you can find them. Right now on Abe, a big source for researching what's available, not necessarily the best place to buy a book, but a good place to see what the market is. There are no signed copies of this book on Abe. And that's not good if you're looking for a signed copy. So I'm glad I paid up for the one I did, but it also looks like I may have got a big deal on this other one. Everything, I didn't need it, but everything looks right about it. Everything looks correct. The signature is correct. The date is correct. And I paid half of what they go for. And right now, if you want one, there isn't one to be found. So I'm hoping that I took one somewhat out of the wild and will be able to knock down the investment in the one that I paid for. But I'm glad I made that decision now. The next book is Dave Eggers. It's an untitled novel. And I am not aware that his excerpt, and there are excerpts of all of these books in the catalog, a sampler. I am not aware that the excerpt in this catalog ever appeared anywhere. He might have used it in an article. He's written in the New Yorker. He's written essays. He's written in a number of places where a Google search might not turn up results. So it's possible he did publish this excerpt somewhere else in another form. But I'm not aware of its appearing anywhere except in this catalog. Something that needs more research, something that needs to be nailed down. He did keep the ISBN for himself, and he used it for You Shall Know Your Velocity, which was a big hit. And I have already happened to be picking up You Shall Know Your Velocity in value buys at very good prices. And so I'm in really good position on this book. The first printing was 2 states. The first state was sold only to McSweeney's subscribers and customers. 10,000 copies with the first edition slug on the copyright page, which copyright page appears on the inside back cover. So I was able to get a first state first printing at a great price. I also have a second state first printing, which is usually referred to as the first trade edition. But the only difference between the two is they printed 10,000 copies and they pulled the first edition slug, and then they ran the rest of the printing, the other 40,000 copies, without the first edition slug. So McSweeney's got the first 10,000 first state. The bookstores got the next 40,000 second state. So I was able to get both. I do have a signed second state. Signed first states are out there, but they're expensive. I don't feel a need to have one. If a value buy comes around, it would be nice, but I don't feel a need to have a signed first state first printing, not at what they go for. They're pretty expensive. And the two Lydia Johnson books and the Dave Byrne books, those hurt. So I'm fine on that. I was also to pick up at a great price the UK uncorrected proof in perfect condition at a great price. They're on consignment at Royal Books. They wanted to get rid of them and practically gave it to me. I finally found a UK first printing. Hard to find. If you find it, you've got to establish some correspondence with the person that has it, and see if you can get it safely. Not a lot of copies in the US. They're expensive. I found a copy in the UK, still in shrink wrap. There was only one printing, so first printing is only printing, and still in shrink wrap of the UK edition at a great price. Corresponded with the guy. He sent me some pictures. He was really nice. The way I wanted the book packaged, he asked me if I would help with the shipping on that. And I said, well, get me some numbers. And if the total price is okay, I'm happy to help with the shipping. Because the way I wanted it packaged was more than he had allowed for it in shipping cost. So that's fair to me, as long as the final number is correct. And it is not here yet, but I have very high expectations, and it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't expensive. It's probably worth more than I have in it. In fact, I'm almost certain it's worth more than I have in it. A lot more, I don't know, because I did have to ship it. But I feel like it was a very good buy. Then things started getting a little easier. We've got Ben Greenman, Super Bad. Fairly readily available, in decent condition. Fairly readily available, signed, in nice condition. Not a lot of money at all. Not have a problem getting pretty nice copy signed. And no objections to the price at all. Next up is Lawrence Krauser, Lemon. This is an interesting one. First printing is what I would call 2 states. The front cover is plain white. It's got a little border around it, but it's like 98% plain white. And the first 10,000 copies, he did a unique sketch on each of the first 10,000 copies on the white front cover. So he did a unique sketch for every one, and he had a stamp with the title of the book, Lemon, and he would use the stamp and title the book. Sometimes he would use the stamp 2 or 3 times. Every cover is unique. And he signed all 10,000 copies on the title page. That's a pretty big project. And the book is fairly readily available and in good condition and at pretty darn reasonable prices. It's just a matter of searching for it and getting some pictures and picking a sketch that you like the most. Very gettable. What I call the second stage first printing has no sketch on the cover. It's just a plain white cover. That was a book I already had. I got several years ago. McSweeney's had a sale, one of their half-price sales, and they had that book very cheap, and I had it, and it still is nice. If it's not perfect, it's as perfect as it was when I got it. So I already have the second state. I have a line on a second state sign, and actually the ones without the sketches, even though there are more of them, are actually harder to find. The people that got one of the first 10,000 copies with the sketches and signed, they got them for a reason, and they took care of them. And that's why there are so many out there, and that's why the price is not particularly high. The ones that he didn't do sketches for, even though there's a lot more of them, they went to people that really do not necessarily all that particularly interested in taking care of the book. And a white cover with a flat white finish doesn't stand up to shelfware very well. So the plain white, even though they printed a lot more of them, is actually harder to find in good condition. And so I have one, and I have a line on a signed one, which would be at a reasonable price. And so if that turns out to be what it's supposed to be, I would definitely grab that up. Next up, Jonathan Lethem. Jonathan Lethem, This Shape We're In. This Shape We're In. Kind of like the Ben Greenham Superbad. Fairly readily available. Fairly readily available in decent condition. Fairly readily available in good condition and signed. And not that much money. Pretty reasonable prices. So that was not a problem. The Neil Pollock is the last one. Neil Pollock, the Neil Pollock Anthology of American Literature. Officially, as far as I know, officially the first standalone title published by McSweeney's. This book is a little bit scarce. It's not tremendously valuable, but it's a little bit scarce. Now, why the Lydia Davis books are sky high, nice and signed, I don't quite understand. The David Byrne I understand because he's a really famous guy. He's done a lot of really famous things. I'm not surprised I'm not surprised at the price on that. I'm surprised it's not more, actually, given who it is. Um, but the Neopollock being the first book put out as a standalone title by McSweeney's is surprisingly affordable if you can find it. It's a little bit tough to find. You can find plain old reading copies somewhat readily. Finding a nice copy is trickier. And finding a nice signed copy is tricky also. They don't cost a lot, but it's another one of those, it's not worth enough for book dealers to really care about it, which means to find a nice copy, you've got to pull it out of the wild somewhere. And so you've just got to be patient and watch and watch and watch and ask questions and pop one up. And I did find a pretty nice signed copy with a really interesting inscription. This was not just flat sign. This had an inscription, and a really interesting inscription. I only paid like $25 for it. So it's a nice copy. Not fine. It's more on the very good. I'd say probably very good. But signed with a great inscription. It was like only 25 bucks delivered. But really, really hard to find a decent copy. Really hard to find a decent signed copy. They're out there, but you've got to look for them. And so that's where we are. Not all the pieces are together yet. I don't have all the books here yet. I think I'm about set on all the books needed to have a complete display, complete bibliographic display of actual examples of first printings of all of the titles of McSweeney's first catalog. So when everything gets here, we'll go through everything again and look at it carefully and see if everything is correct. And in the meantime, I will continue putting my notes together and work out how to write this up in a way that's interesting, I hope. But just the writing by itself isn't going to get me any kind of deal. But having a complete display of everything in here and the various variants and sign and the reassigned ISBNs, copies of those books, having all of that together as a complete investigation of the catalog certainly makes my case for being the person for the project if the project gets picked up. And if it doesn't get picked up, if it gets killed off somewhere along the way, maybe along the way another door cracks open. Maybe this project doesn't happen, but it leads me into another project. It's going to go in front of people that have influence on those things. So if there's any interest anywhere along the way, there could be some side paths to take that would make this pay off. So I'm doing everything I can to establish my credentials. That's can't say that's the short version of what I'm going after here because I'm at 35 minutes. uh, my videos are like my writing, they get longer and longer. But that's the overview of what the titles are and the story behind the titles and where the acquisitions are, the ones that hurt. But I was as prudent as nobody could put it together a collection this nice for this money without being a dealer themselves. Can't be done. Was it inexpensive? No. Could somebody else do it for less? No. Not unless they're a book dealer with connections in all the right places. That just wouldn't be possible. So I've got something that's got some value. How much value? How much value added? Don't know. It could still be a situation where the pieces are worth more than the whole, even though the whole is much more interesting. But I'm not worrying about that or thinking about that. I'm just trying to establish that I'm the guy to take the full bibliographic project and see if I can get somebody to give me a contract. See if I can get somebody to pay me pay me in advance. There we go.